Man, I've been a counselor since 1996. So that's over 25 years. And what led me down this path, I went to Oregon State University and I thought, maybe I'd be an engineer. And when I went there, that just wasn't it. And I said, man, I'd really be glad if I had a niche. And all the while I was trying to find my niche, I was doing volunteers at the Boys and Girls Club, volunteers at a children's camp as a counselor, and I realized that was it, being with people, being with kids, being with families. So that's kind of what led me down that road, and I changed my major to psychology, and that's how I started to work. I did, and I don't apologize for that one bit, man. My mother always instilled in us the beauty of black folks, the beauty about us, the beauty in our community. And at the time when I was going to college, there was a lot of gang violence in our community, and a lot of people deemed Northeast Portland, as negative, and the hood was negative. And the hood had been really, really good to me because there had been mentors and people who came alongside me, people who allowed me to sit on their shoulders and stand on their shoulders. That really impelled me to be able to go on to college. So I didn't buy, that we had a negative community. And in fact, the thing that I wanted to do was go on to college and get educated and bring the positivity back to a positive community. As a way of kind of saying how you like us now. Absolutely. You know, number of issues, and when people, kind of just throw it out there like that because they think that I know everything, I'm a doctor, I stay in my lane. So as I answer that question, man, I look through the lens of mental health, and mental health, the untreated mental health. And when you talk about the untreated mental health, then you got to talk about the stigmas that exist. And we know those stigmas that exist. Black people don't go to counseling, white people do. We don't go to counseling, we go to church. What goes on in this house stays in this house. If you are going to counseling, that means that you're crazy. So we got this untreated mental health illness, and we have these stigmas. But what happens is that people put the onus on us, and they say, well, if you all can just get past these stigmas. But before we do that, we have to understand where the stigmas come from. They come from not having anti-racist systems. They come from having systems in the medical and the mental health community that have been so harmful to black people. And when you think about all of that, that makes sense. Because you just don't use something that you don't trust. And for years, the system hasn't been, it hasn't been good to black people. Therefore, you don't trust the system. You don't use a system that you don't trust. That's what I'm trying to say. You just don't use a system, that you don't trust. Yeah. Well, when you think about us now, where we are as a people, trauma, anxiety, depression, at an all-time high, especially now, since the pandemic, post-pandemic. And a lot of people are really quick to say that the pandemic has caused this mental health crisis. And I'm always saying pump your brakes on that, because I think we've always been in a mental health crisis. The pandemic has really shined the light on it. So what I say is, I just encourage people to kind of, explore it for themselves. I think about an example. Years ago, I had a young lady. She came to counseling, or she was encouraged, strongly encouraged to come to counseling. She wasn't doing well in school. And after she came, we did some work, and it worked out well for her. And then later on, she said, you know what, Doc? I just didn't really think that this was going to work. I didn't believe in counseling. In fact, I was going to come and cuss that white man out. And I said, okay, I'm not following. Who's a white man? She said, you. I thought you were going to be a white man. I thought you were going to have a lab coat on. I thought you were going to tell me to lay on the couch and talk about my childhood. And she said, and that's not what it was. I didn't expect to see somebody from my community who understands my community, culturally sensitive, culturally responsive, and we're just here having a conversation and we're dealing with my mental health. So she didn't see that. So what I encourage folks to do is to try it out for themselves. Also to look at it from a consumer's point of view. Just if you were going out and you wanted to buy a pair of shoes, you wouldn't walk in the store and say, give me a pair of shoes, and somebody just give you a pair of shoes and you walk out with it. You don't know what size it is. So to be able to go in there and ask questions about cultural sensitivity, the person's connectedness to the community, so on and so forth. Now, that's saying that, that's the assumption that you can find a counselor. Maybe you can't find a counselor, but maybe there are some things that you can do that are therapeutic related. If you can't find a therapist, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't find things that are therapeutic, that are therapeutic for you. So some of those things, they could be faith-based. They could be some groups. There could be some people who you hang around with, who you can talk to, who aren't saying, what, if I were you, but some people who really know how to listen and don't judge. That stuff is all therapeutic. So, I just encourage for folks to find that stuff that really works for them. Yeah. I would have to say so. Our kids right now have access to information faster than any other, more than any other, generation. I mean, and the information's not always good. Therefore, I'm sure it does have an influence. So I think platforms like this, kind of help to be able to do that. And I think that we have to be responsible as adults, as professionals, to make sure that we create some counter narratives to all of those other things, giving a different message. So yes, and there's a responsibility on our part to keep up with this moving trend. Man, you went back to the dissertation. Man, unfortunately, no. And let me give you just a little bit of context. As I wrote that, I was writing in terms of African American men, in the professorate, African Americans in counseling, in the counseling field specifically. And I was at George Fox University for 15 years. And in 15 years, I can say maybe 7 black men came through that program. Half of those didn't live in Portland and moved away. And the other half didn't come back to communities of color, to support communities of color. So unfortunately, no, which is one of my reasons why, after being at the university for so many years, I realized that my impact was not at the university. My impact was right here in the community. So that's something that we still have to deal with, and it's still ongoing. Yeah, I have no problem at all with folks rapping a lyric, dribbling a basketball, catching a football. When you ask that question, how can we make school cool? We got to get some cool folks in school. So that's kind of an institutional thing. As I said, I just left a university and they have a great DEI statement, but when it comes down to, putting, your money where your mouth is, and understanding that it's going to take some money, it's going to take some effort to get folks of color, to get folks that connect, to be able to work there. There's always some incongruency. So in order to make school cool, we got to be able to get those cool folks in the school. And platforms like this help. Platforms like this because, as you talked about, the media. So what do you see in the media? Well, in the media you see, football players, basketball players. You see the rappers and everything. But platforms like this will help, folks, kids understand that, there are other things out there that they can do in addition to. So I never want to tell folks that, you shouldn't be dreaming about, being an actor or a rapper or whatever the case is. I would just want all of our youth to understand that there are so many different things that they can do. Absolutely. Don't have any openings, but like you said, for consultations, always the ability to do that. I'm at KeithDempseyCounseling.com, KeithDempseyCounseling.com. And the other part that we do, I have a team of African American therapists, and we do trainings. We do a training called Who Heals the Healers. So we work with some school districts. We work with some folks, agencies that are out here doing the work. As you know, there's been an uptick in shooting, an uptick in violence, and trauma, depression. All of that stuff is at its very highest. And the whole idea is we can't pour from an empty glass. So those folks who are boots on the ground, who are doing the work, those folks need to be taken care of too. So we do some of those trainings as well.